So I've been racking my brain for the last couple of weeks trying to figure out what part of my story am I going to tell? And only when looking and really reflecting on the theme of today's topic, I really found my story. Because I looked at what does it take to go into the unknown? It takes courage. And for me, it's been moments of courage throughout my life. And the most impactful moment of courage that I've ever displayed to myself is the story I want to share with you all today. And really, it simply was just me raising my hand and asking for help. You might be thinking to yourself, well, Taj, how hard is it to ask for help? Well, I think it all begins with the career path I chose. So I've been a paramedic for the last 8 to 9 years of my life. And that career has taken me to numerous cities all across British Columbia. I've seen life, I've seen death, I've seen trauma. You know, the most severe and heinous acts to severed limbs, burnt bodies, well, I'll let your imagination run wild with what possibly I could have seen, because I've seen it all, it seems. But it was never the physical trauma that I saw that really stuck with me. You know, I could see all the blood and guts, and I could just shake it off. It was the emotional pain that really got to me. You know, I recount a experience with a woman who was just completely distraught. She was just completely destroyed when she found her 15-year-old son sprawled out on the living room floor, unconscious, not breathing. So who did she call? And who shows up at the door? I get there and we immediately notice he's too far gone. It's been hours. There's nothing I can do. And I can still recount the wails, the pure anguish she displayed, pleading me to bring her son back. I just couldn't do anything. But I had a superpower. I had a superpower that allowed me to go into those situations, feel the pain, witness it, and be that confident, respected professional that the job demanded. And that's what got me through. But that superpower of me turning off my emotions continued after the call. The most vivid call I can recount is one that involves peds. And if you ask any medic, any first responder, they'll tell you any peds call is the one that they want to avoid. And peds being short for pediatrics, children. So the day we see that message come on our screen of an unresponsive child, my heart skips a beat, even to this day. And any seasoned vet will also tell you there is fear struck into you when you have to deal with a child who is struggling to live. And the call came in as unconscious, unresponsive child. Immediately, I got even more fearful when I realized I'm the more senior guy in the ambulance. It's my job to take reins on this. Everyone's going to look to me. And immediately when I walked through the door, I was handed this lifeless corpse of an infant child. And the image, I can still see it there. It didn't even look real. It was a miscarriage that a woman had just delivered. And when recounting the story, I just imagined someone just handed me a doll. It didn't even look real. Again, it wasn't that physical trauma that haunted me. It was the face of those parents when they realized he's not going to do anything. He's just going to stand there and hold that baby because there's nothing he could do. And the pure anguish that they displayed is seared into my brain forever. Those were the calls that stuck with me. And after the call, I looked to my partner and he asked me 2 questions. He said, "Are you good, man?" I said, "Yeah, of course. Why aren't you?" He said, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yes, of course. Shrug it off and suck it up, man. Let's get on to the next call." I said that to a junior member who I was to mentor. I told him to suck it up. And I hate that wasn't the first occurrence. That behavior continued for months, heck, even years. And it was only when that superpower of me being able to turn off my emotions and be that professional started seeping into my personal life that I realized it was not a superpower. It was a curse. A term, healthcare hero, has been coined in the last few years. And shit, I felt like a hero in those moments when I was able to revive someone from the brink of death. But who was I when I took that uniform off? Because the mentality was, once the uniform goes in the bag and you go back home, what happens at work stays at work. You don't need to talk about it. You don't need to get all feelies. Just be a man, suck it up, and move on. That was the mentality I kept. And so I never shared how I felt. I was not authentic. So I wasn't confident. And I sure as hell didn't have a purpose unless I had that uniform on. I felt like a hero. I was respected. I was charismatic. I was confident. But once the stage lights went off, and just me, myself, and I, you did not want to be around that. Because I bottled it up. And when you bottle up your emotions, they're bound to blow. And I recount the day that it did blow. It was after a long night shift. I'm talking 14 hours. And I'd worked the day before and I got no sleep. I was running probably on 24 hours of no sleep when that night shift ended. And I was a little zombie driving back home at 8 a.m. And I knew as soon as I got home, I'm going to hit that pillow and not awake until I got to do it again the next night. But something funny happened that night, that day. I got home, and thank God I got home. I barely could function behind the wheel. I got home and went in to the washroom. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. And for some reason, this day, I looked back. And I really reflected on who was looking at me. I hated the way I looked. I hated the way I felt. I hated the way I existed. But that was me. Why did I have such disdain for myself? I started to get angry. I was like, what are you talking about, Taj? You have life good. You have a roof over your head, a fridge full of food. You got it all. You have more than most. A heck of a lot more than the folks you would see on the downtown east side. So what do you got to complain now? You feel anxious? You feel depressed? Suck it up and get back to it, man. Now, I was fired up. I was getting beat red. I don't get to feel this way. You have nothing to complain about. You don't have trauma. Nothing to compare to what you see. So I wiped those tears. And I walked out of the washroom, and now I'm fired up. There's no way I'm going to sleep now. So instead of facing that anger, facing those emotions, what did I do? I did what I always did. I used my trifecta. My trifecta of grabbing whatever junk food I could get my hands on. That night it was a box of cookies and a big old tub of ice cream and a nice cool glass of milk. And I plopped my ass down on the couch and I turned the TV on. Whew. Angry, depressed, anxious. We got things to do. And I munched and I used the Netflix, the junk food, the cannabis, the shrooms, whatever substance I could get on. My trifecta helped me cope, helped me mask that pain. It was, what was I doing? Was that my life? Was I going to just go through the motions and put my body through this emotional roller coaster just long enough so I can get back to that ambulance where I feel like a hero? What was this jumping back and forth? Was this the rest of my life? Was I always going to feel this way? I didn't know, because I felt as though that only existed in the movies. The TV shows, those were the places where people could truly be open, truly be authentic. I didn't have anybody in my life that portrayed they were struggling. Yeah, these patients, but they have it way worse. I don't have an excuse. So I sat there, and hours went by. Hours went by of just binge eating and binge watching and fully well knowing I gotta get up in a few hours and I gotta put that uniform on. What the fuck was I doing? And by some serendipitous, coincidental way, this video had popped up on my feed as I was just scrolling through mindless media. And the title of it was, of this TED Talk, The Effects of PTSD in Emergency Medical Services, the suck it up culture. Without hesitation, my hand clicked OK. I didn't even think about it. My body just knew this is something you need to watch. And the remote dropped and I just sank back into my chair. And as this middle-aged white male from Kansas City who was married and worked as a paramedic for 20 years spoke about the symptoms he was struggling with. And I was right there with him, checking off each box. Inability to sleep, not able to enjoy the things you used to enjoy, suicidal ideation, panic attacks, yada, yada. I was just checking off each and everything with him, and I'm like, what the? Is this the one person in my life who I can relate to? It just blew my mind. My heart just sank into my chest. And I had this epiphany that it's not just in the TV. It's not just in the movies. There are people who struggle with these. And this individual who I watched speak, he had to try to take his own life. To finally realize when he woke in the hospital bed, after slitting his throat or hanging himself, whatever he had tried, he awoke and he realized, I need to make a change. These people around me, they need me to change. And I was speechless. I couldn't fathom, is that the next step? Is that what I have to go to? Do I have to roll the dice on my life in order to make a change? I'm not taking that bet. I can't. I can't. And I realized in that moment, I need help. But who was I going to call? Friends, family, they didn't understand. They never displayed these emotions. I never thought that anybody could feel this much anguish to the point where they wanted to take their own life. So I had nobody to call. And I decided, if I'm not going to change, I might as well take that bet. So I walked over to the kitchen. I grabbed the biggest chef's knife I could find, and I took it to my throat. Tip to throat. And I decided, this is the next step. This is how I change. And I stood there in the living room thinking, if you do this, there's no coming back. There is 100% guarantee you will die. And I don't know if I can truly say that I was going to take that. But I think fate was on my side that day. And out of the corner of my eye, just as I got the tip to skin, I saw this card. In fact, it's this card. And it had a number on it for the Critical Incident Stress Management Team. A hotline for emergency responders to call. And I thought, well, I've called them before. And we've gone through the motions. They didn't really help. I answered their questions, yeah. But I had nobody else. I decided, what's the harm? If this thing goes to shit, I can take my life right after. So I decided to call. And that angelic person, whoever answered the call on the other side, he knew exactly what to say. Because in that moment, tears running down my face, snot just dripping, hands quivering. I was just about to kill myself. The only words I could utter on the phone were, I need help. This man simply said, Taj, help has arrived. And he went on to say, Taj, you're not the only one who struggles. This took a lot of courage for you to make this call. I have one question for you. Are you thinking of killing yourself? I said, yes. I'd never been asked that before. I never thought someone had the balls to ask someone that. And I thought, this guy knows. He knows. And our conversation continued. And at the end, he said, Taj, you're not going to work tomorrow. We're taking you off for the month. You're going to see a counselor tomorrow. You're going to get the help you need. It gets easier from here. All I could utter was, thank you. Thank you. And I hung up that call and I just felt free. I looked at that knife and I thought, I don't need that. It had felt like a weight had been lifted off of me for the first time in my life. And I thought, wow, is this what it feels like to share authentically? I had never even admitted these thoughts, these feelings to myself. And here I was, admitting it to a stranger. After that day, it just felt as though I had become a new man. In fact, I'd never felt like a man before that day. I felt like a little boy, too scared to just share how he thinks. And now I stand before you, telling you, I'm becoming that man. And it feels fantastic. So why do I share this story with you all? for me. It's for those of you out there who are currently struggling with being your authentic self, with sharing who you are. I'm here to tell you, there are people out here who understand, who want to listen, who want to hear your story. Because I truly, truly believe everyone has a story. And whether you feel the call to share it on a stage, amazing. But those stories need to be shared, whether it be a friend, a family member, heck, even a stranger. And I assure you that if you go into that and you raise your hand and you ask for help, you won't regret it.